how do you price your product or service? Like, do you think it's a good idea to price it differently for different markets and different countries, or can you just have one uniform price? And you know, yeah,
Okay. It's actually quite a complex question, and that will depend on many factors. I feel from what I've seen. Uh, I've worked a long time in the travel industry, where you have differential prices per market, right? But before I get into this, let's the first thing before you define your prices, there are several things you need to do, right? Whatever the result of same prices or differential prices. So the first one, you need to know your costs. Right? So you have to know how much it will cost to deliver that service or that product. So your rent, your salaries, your variable costs, all that, you need to master it, understand them, and be able to factor it into the way you calculate your prices, first of all, right? So your cost base. Number two, you need to understand your customer. So understand the customer as in what are they willing to pay, right? Generally, we're not talking yet between the difference between same price and different price. Generally, you need to do that, right? Your homework. So you got your cost. You need to know what your customer are willing to pay. You need to look at your competition. What is it that they're offering? And what is it they're offering, not only in terms of price, but in terms of what do you get for that price? It could be a bundle product price. It could be anything else, right? So you need to understand what your customers are doing. Then you need to choose the type of pricing strategy that you want to apply. So there are various ways to cost a product. So to charge for a product. So to price it, you have a cost plus. So you take your cost and you put a percentage on top of it, or I don't know, right, whatever.
Yep.
So that's one way. Another way is to have a value-based strategy pricing. So based on how your customer are perceiving the value of your product, which is extremely difficult, right? Because how do you assess how a customer feels for your product, right?
Yeah.
But it is a way to, it is more complex, but it is possible to do that. You have penetration pricing. Penetration pricing, you want to go to a market and you go low price, and you want to, smash the competition around you in that marketplace, you go low. Problem with that is that in the longer run, it's really hard to increase your prices, right? So, but that's a strategy that's possible, right? You have what we call skimming prices. So skimming prices is that you actually start with a high price, and as you get volume, then you allow yourself lower price because you give away some margin to get more client, and you gain on the volume. Right?
That's usually my favorite way because you can get the rich people to buy it first.
Correct.
And you can slow it down.
Correct. And then your early adopters as well are more secure because they agree to pay a higher price. So there's a loyalty that's higher. Once if you go low, then the volatility and the churn of your client can be really high, and there's actually no loyalty in what they're purchasing from you.
Yep.
And then you have the type of premium type of pricing and strategy, which again depends. So it's very popular in the SaaS business, right? So you have your three, you've got your free, you've got your premium, you've got your enterprise chorus.
Yep.
So and that's also another strategy. It's very standardized, and then you can do it online. You can self-service as well, right? So that's quite powerful. So that's the component of the strategy. Then you have to test and adjust whatever model you choose.
Yep.
Right? So you got to test. You got to do your A/B testing. You have to test per market. You have to test. You have to track the pricing, whether it affects your sale, it affects your margin, and without having done all that homework, you don't get the answer to, do I go same price or do I go differentiate price? Right? So all that homework needs to be done regardless, right? Now, when you've done that, there are school of thoughts that are in favor of multiple different pricing, and you have single pricing. So the pricings for being in favor of differentiating prices. So you have the purchasing power. So you can adopt your pricing based on how people can afford. So if you have a price, right? So if you sell it in Europe, the affordability of that product is easier than maybe someone in Laos, for instance, right?
Yep.
Because basically the income level are not the same.
Definitely.
So you can actually price it on basis that what people can afford or not. You can have pricing. The benefit, one of the best benefit as well are cost differentiation. So your cost base can be different from market to market. So if you're delivering a product, physical product, say from Thailand, and you deliver it to Cambodia, that cost ain't going to be the same as if you deliver it to Europe, right? So you might need to price your product based on how much it costs you to deliver that particular product to where people buy it from. You might need to price differently because of the competitive landscape. So pricing, your competitor might be applying a pricing strategy that will have an effect on the way you price yourself. Because if they're pricing differently per country, then maybe that's something that you need to follow, and maybe that population is actually used to buying that way. So, and that's okay. So competitive pricing strategy also affects that. And then you have, interestingly, cultural perception. Yeah? What is cheap? What is not cheap? How people perceive what is cheap and not cheap also depends, right? So that also could affect the way your decision in terms of in favor of going for differentiating pricing, because if you know that a market is really tough on price, then there's no need to go and hike the prices because you know it's not going to work, right? Another market, is very can afford, they're happy to pay, okay, no problem, then optimize your price accordingly. And then obviously you have laws and regulation that will drive also in terms of taxation, whether that affects your margin, and whether tariffs, yeah, exactly, and whether you need to absorb some of that in your those costs into your margin, or whether you don't want to do that, so you need to up your pricing. Again, going different prices per different market, and looking at the component I just described, will help it are in favor of going different prices, right? Because you have that flexibility in your business.
Yeah.
If you go geo pricing, like everybody the same, then you obviously you put yourself sometime at a position where it's difficult to control. So because you have the same price in, say, emerging market and not emerging market.
Yeah.
So all the arguments I said earlier on, you get the opposite for the standard single pricing. Okay. You also have to be careful with issues like what we call the gray market. So a gray market is when you sell the same service or product to two different markets, two different products, but one market is reselling to the other market. Right. So that's gray because you don't control your prices anymore. So the one that's more expensive, that's cheaper, might buy from that's more expensive, buys from the cheaper one, without you knowing it, and is bypassing your pricing strategy.
Isn't it called arbitrage or something? They buy from something cheaper and then they sell it to the country which is higher price.
That could be the case. So, but that's one point. The second point to that, and there's a continuity of it, is that customer might get annoyed with that if they find out. Right. In fact, in the hospitality business, which is notoriously famous for selling hotel rooms at different prices to different market, right? And you have
even different devices that you searching
exactly,
for, right?
And certain rooms are reserved for certain category of clients, not only in terms of rates, but in terms of their nationality, right? Or whether they come from a group or they're individual travelers, right? So all this is well known in this industry. And when you arrive at the hotel, you start talking to maybe another guest because you be friends with them, and they say, "How much did you pay?" And you find out that maybe you pay like 2, 3, 4, 5,000 baht more. And how do you feel? Right? And it's hard to explain that person paid more than the other person. Same for flights, right? Flights is exactly the same, right? So it's a well-known practice. Whether client likes it, it's debatable. Even when you go to an attraction park here in Thailand. So you got the price for the foreigners and you have the price for the locals, right? And unless you have your tax ID card,
Yep.
then you don't get that
No,
price.
yeah.
So I hope that answers your question, but it's very
Yeah.
complex.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate it. You explain very detailed pricing models, and what I was asking more general. So basically, so there's two options, right? One is specific to market, and one is uniform pricing. So what I mean by that is, say, for example, if you like you said, hotel, it depend on the market, depend on the person, right? The hotel in Laos might be cheaper than in Singapore. Singapore is more expensive country. But if you have a product like, say, Apple iPhone, it's a uniform price for the whole world. Even the country that is considered poor, they still buy it with the same price.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they,
But that's different, right?
yeah, that's
Because
different.
you're not just buying the product.
You buy the brand.
You're buying the experience. You're
Yeah.
buying the brand, and you're buying most importantly, you're buying the ecosystem that goes with it as well.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
you're not just buying a phone.
Yeah.
You are potentially buying the smartphone, the smartwatch. You're
Yeah.
buying
Yeah.
the AirPods. You're buying the laptop. You're buying a multitude of services, which comes with that particular product, right?
Yeah.
And being those brands, worldwide brands, which are almost untouchable, then they can command prices.
Yeah.
Right? You afford it, that's great. You can't afford it, walk away. Get a cheap version. I don't really
Yeah.
care you because I don't want you as a customer. Because if you can't afford my product, this one, then for sure you're not going to be able to afford the rest.
Yeah.
So this is a natural selection through prices, and the brand
Yeah.
is crying out for that, right?
Yeah, yeah. So to follow up to that, it's basically you don't necessarily have to reduce your price if you can have a good brand, if you can build your own good brand. That can be another strategy, and still reducing the price.
Totally. Reducing price will affect your brand, but it does not
Yeah.
determine your brand. The
Right.
brand is determined by your product, your experience,
Yeah.
how you market it.
Who use it?
You can have great marketing and sell a shitty product and still be great marketing and a great product to buy.
Yeah.
So product is not everything.
Yeah.
The way you market it, the way you position it, the story that you create around that product
Yeah.
are key to establishing you
Yes.
as a huge player
Yep.
or a player, a brand of reference,
Yes.
and therefore will command a certain level of pricing that people are willing to pay. And if they're not, they're probably not in your ICP.
Hi, I'm David Beckham. From Auckland, New Zealand.